Right now, somewhere on Earth, someone is praying. In a mosque, in a church, in a temple, beside a hospital bed, in a car stuck in traffic. They are speaking to something they cannot see, cannot prove, and cannot touch. And somehow, this feels completely natural, normal, like something humans have always done. But here's a question almost nobody asks. When did this start? Not which religion came first, not which God is real, but the actual moment somewhere in prehistory when a human brain first looked at the world and decided that something invisible was responsible for it. When did humans first believe in God? The answer is stranger than any religion has ever described, and it reaches into something so deep inside your brain that you are probably doing it right now without realizing it. Let's start with what we actually know. For most of history, people assumed religion was ancient but unverifiable. Something that happened before writing, before records, before anything we could study. But in the last 50 years, archaeology changed everything because humans left evidence. Not written evidence, physical evidence, buried in caves and ancient graves and stone structures older than any civilization we recognize. The oldest evidence we have of possible religious behavior is roughly 300,000 years old. In a cave in South Africa called the Rising Star Cave, researchers found something unexpected. Deep inside, in a chamber almost impossible to reach, were bones. Dozens of them. Arranged deliberately. Not eaten, not scattered, placed. The species was Homo naledi, a distant human relative with a brain roughly 1/3 the size of yours. They should not have been capable of symbolic thought. They should not have cared about their dead. And yet, someone carried those bodies deep into that cave and left them there intentionally. Scientists are still debating what this means. But the simplest explanation is this. Something about death felt significant to them. Something made them treat a dead body as more than just meat. And that instinct, that feeling that death requires a response may be where religion begins. But here's where it gets more complicated. Caring about the dead is not the same as believing in God. It is the beginning of something. A crack in the wall between the ordinary world and whatever humans sensed might be beyond it. The next piece of evidence comes from roughly 100,000 years ago. Graves, real deliberate graves, with the body positioned carefully, sometimes with objects placed beside them. Tools, food, flowers, possibly, based on pollen found at one site in Iraq. Why would you bury food with a dead person unless some part of you believed they might need it? Unless some part of you believed they were going somewhere? This is the first clear evidence of what anthropologists call afterlife belief. The idea that death is not an ending, that something continues. And this idea, researchers now believe, may have been the seed from which all religion eventually grew. But why did humans develop this belief at all? This is where science gets genuinely fascinating. In 2011, cognitive scientist Pascal Boyer published research arguing that religious belief is not a cultural invention. It is a byproduct of how the human brain evolved to work. Your brain, he argued, is a pattern detection machine. It evolved to find agents, to find things with intentions, behind events in the world. A rustle in the grass means a predator. A shadow moving means danger. The brain that assumed intention behind every event survived longer than the brain that didn't. Better to assume a predator that isn't there than to miss one that is. But here's the side effect nobody planned for. A brain wired to detect agents everywhere doesn't stop at predators. It detects intention behind storms, behind disease, behind drought, behind death. Your brain, the same brain that kept your ancestors alive by seeing danger everywhere, is also a machine for seeing invisible forces behind everything that happens. Religion, Boyer argued, is not something humans invented. It is something the human brain generates automatically, because the same wiring that kept us alive also makes the universe feel watched. Think about that for a moment. The instinct that makes you feel like someone is behind you in a dark room is the same instinct that made your ancestors feel like something was behind the storm. The first concrete evidence of actual religious ritual comes from roughly 70,000 years ago. In a cave in Botswana called Rhino Cave, researchers found something extraordinary. A large rock, naturally shaped like a python. Enormous, dominating the cave. Around it, researchers found hundreds of burned spearheads, carefully crafted and then deliberately destroyed in fire. Offerings. This is the oldest known religious ritual ever discovered. 70,000 years ago, before any civilization, before any written language, before any organized religion, humans were making offerings to something they believed deserved their finest work, something they believed could hear them. And then, roughly 40,000 years ago, something shifted. Something that archaeologists call the Great Leap Forward, a sudden explosion of symbolic behavior across the human archaeological record. Cave paintings, sculptures, musical instruments, burial sites with elaborate grave goods, all appearing almost simultaneously across different parts of the world. The most famous of these cave paintings, in Lascaux in France and Altamira in Spain, show not just animals but scenes, rituals, figures that are half human, half animal. Shamans, most researchers now believe. People who served as intermediaries between the ordinary world and whatever world they believed existed beyond it. One of the most remarkable objects from this period is the Lion Man of Hohenstein-Stadel. Small figurine, 40,000 years old, carved from mammoth ivory. It shows a human body with the head of a lion. It took an estimated 400 hours to carve with stone tools. 400 hours. For an object that had no practical use, no survival value. Someone spent 400 hours of their life, in a world where survival was a daily struggle, creating something purely symbolic, something that existed entirely in the realm of belief. That is not superstition. That is devotion. The first actual temple ever discovered is even more astonishing. Göbekli Tepe in modern Turkey, 12,000 years old. Built before agriculture, before writing, before cities, before any of the things we associate with organized civilization. Massive stone pillars, some weighing 10 to 20 tons, carved with elaborate animal reliefs, arranged in precise circles. Built by hunter-gatherers who had no metal tools, no wheels, no permanent settlements. Archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, who spent years excavating the site, argued that Göbekli Tepe did not come after civilization. It came before it. That religion did not emerge from civilization. Civilization emerged from religion. Humans built a temple first, and then built a society around it. That idea changes everything, because we have always assumed the sequence went like this. Humans survived, then settled, then built, then believed. But the evidence at Göbekli Tepe suggests something different. That belief came first. That the need to gather, to worship, to orient the community around something sacred was what caused humans to cooperate at the scale required to build civilization at all. Religion was not the product of human society. It may have been its cause. And then writing arrived, roughly 5,000 years ago, and the gods got names. Enlil, Ra, Zeus, Brahma. The invisible forces that human brains had been sensing for 300,000 years suddenly had faces, story, personalities, temples with addresses. The private instinct became public institution, and the institution became the most powerful organizing force in human history. Wars fought in its name. Empires built around it, laws written to serve it, art created to honor it. Every cathedral, every mosque, every temple ever built is the physical expression of something that started in a cave in Botswana 70,000 years ago, when someone held a spearhead over a fire and gave it to a rock shaped like a snake. So where does that leave us? Modern humans live in a world with more scientific knowledge than any generation before us. We can explain storms, we can explain disease, we can explain death at a biological level in more detail than anyone in history. And yet, belief persists. In every country, in every culture, among the educated and the uneducated, the rich and the poor, the ancient and the modern. Researchers have found that even people who consciously reject religious belief still demonstrate the cognitive patterns that produce it, still feel like the universe is watching sometimes, still talk to something in their darkest moments, still feel, in ways they cannot fully explain, that death is not simply an ending, because the brain that generates religion has not changed. The wiring is still there. The agent detection, the pattern recognition, the instinct that something invisible might be responsible for what happens to you. That is not faith. That is architecture. The architecture of a mind shaped by 300,000 years of finding meaning in a world that offered very little certainty and no explanations at all. You inherited that mind. Every prayer ever spoken, every candle ever lit, every offering ever made to something that could not answer back, came from the same place inside the human brain that kept your ancestors alive in the dark. The question of when humans first believed in God may not have a single answer, because it was never a single moment. It was a slow accumulation. A dead body carried into a cave, a grave dug with food placed inside it, a spearhead burned in offering, a lion-headed figure carved across 400 hours of someone's one and only life. A temple built before anyone knew why they were building it. It started the moment a human brain first looked at the darkness and felt, without any evidence at all, that something was looking back.